The film opens with a glimpse into the life of Z, a professional assassin living in the heart of Paris. Apparently, Z operates in the shadows, working for a powerful organization led by a man named Finn. One morning, Z wakes up and gazes out the window of her apartment, savoring the beauty of the city as she completes a crossword puzzle. The serene moment contrasts sharply with the dangerous life she leads. Later that day, Z meets Finn in a quiet, ancient church. Finn, who affectionately calls Z my heartbeat, briefs her on a new mission. His tone is serious as he emphasizes that Z must eliminate everyone in a nightclub that evening, following the plan they had previously discussed. The weight of the task hangs in the air, but Z remains composed, her professionalism unwavering. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, two police officers, Say and Jax, are tailing a drug lord named Coco, who is driving a red sedan. At one moment, they manage to pull Coco over, but as they attempt to handcuff him, he resists violently. In the struggle, Coco grabs one of their guns and shoots Jax in the leg. Say quickly tends to his wounded partner, while Coco makes a desperate attempt to escape in his car. Say, however, doesn't let him get far. With remarkable speed and precision, he fires at the vehicle, causing it to flip over. Despite his injuries, Coco crawls out of the wreckage and flees on foot. A tense chase ensues, culminating in a heart-stopping moment when Coco takes a young child hostage. At that moment, Say warns him to stand down, but Coco refuses, pressing the gun to the child's head. Reluctantly, Say takes the shot, and Coco falls into the river below. Back in Paris, Z prepares for her mission by visiting her old friend Tessier, a refined and elderly tailor with a touch of class. In the warmth of his workshop, Z asks if the man who once hurt Tessier has been bothering him again. Tessier responds with surprise, wondering how the man could still be causing trouble. However, Z simply smiles, knowing full well that she had already dealt with the man, leaving him battered and warning him never to return. Before Z leaves, Tessier presents her with a suit he has crafted, calling it sacred. He assures her that wearing it will make her look extraordinary. That night, Z walked into the club with confidence, clad in an elegant suit gifted to her by Tessier. She made her way to a private room within the club, where members of a notorious drug gang, led by Serge, were gathered. Among them was a young singer named Jen, who was performing on stage. Jen's melodious voice filled the room, and Z appeared to enjoy the heartfelt song. As the atmosphere grew more intense, a man, none other than Serge, approached Z and attempted to flirt with her. He invited her to dance. Maintaining her composure, Z accepted his offer, but not before requesting that anyone not directly involved leave the room, as she required privacy. Serge complied, and soon only 5 gang members remained, along with Jen, who was preoccupied with her phone, discreetly messaging Coco. The mission was about to begin. Z positioned herself at the center of the room and started dancing slowly in front of Serge, drawing the attention of everyone present. However, the atmosphere shifted drastically when Jen received a message confirming Coco's death. Seizing the moment, Z swiftly pulled out a concealed short katana from the strap of her clothing and, with a precise slash, struck Serge down in an instant. The gang members froze in shock before scrambling to grab their weapons. One of them attempted to flee, but Z moved swiftly, blocking his path and stabbing him in the back without hesitation. Another member opened fire, but Z used the dying man's body as a shield, escalating the chaos in the room. Within moments, the space was engulfed in gunfire. Serge, still alive, had managed to crawl behind a table, clutching his weapon as he aimed at Z. But with her quick reflexes, she fired first, striking Serge and shattering the table into pieces. The impact sent Jen tumbling to the ground, where shards of glass cut into her skin, and her head slammed against the furniture. Dazed and disoriented, her vision blurred. Moments later, Z approached Jen with her gun raised. However, upon seeing the singer's helpless state, unable to even register her presence, Z hesitated. Instead of finishing her off, she turned away, sparing her life. It was a choice that would come with consequences, leaving behind a living witness. With her mission complete, Z returned to an old church. One by one, she lit candles, lost in thought as she reflected on the lives she had just taken. With a bottle of liquor in hand, she sat in silence, consumed by her own contemplation. Not long after, Finn arrived to check on her well-being. He then asked why she had spared the American singer, Jen. As it turns out that the mission's rule had been clear: no witnesses, not even civilians. Z responded simply, questioning whether Jen truly deserved to die, given that she had no involvement with the gang. Finn remained calm, explaining that he wouldn't have given the order if it weren't necessary. In the end, he reminded Z that this was part of the job and added that Gobert had paid handsomely to ensure there were no loose ends. The scene then showing Julius Gobert, an Irishman, was known to be a key figure in an international drug network. Acting as both a broker and an overseer for a powerful drug lord, Gobert had ordered Finn to use Z as a tool to eliminate competition in the drug trade. It was revealed that Gobert had invested $75 million with a man named Majib to purchase a large quantity of heroin. However, the heroin was stolen when Majib's private jet landed at Le Bourget Airport at 4:30 p.m. on the route to Beirut. This incident not only enraged Gobert, but also threatened his standing within the global drug trade network. Meanwhile, at a police station, Say is seen attending an internal hearing to explain his actions in shooting Coco. Facing senior officials, Say firmly states that he had no choice, as Coco had pointed a gun at a child's and had also shot his colleague, Jax. Despite Say's detailed account, his superiors still condemned his actions. Say insisted that he had seen madness in Coco's eyes, a dangerous instability that could have led to an even worse outcome, leaving him no other option. Disheartened, Say left the hearing room and returned to his office, where his colleague, Alves, was waiting alongside a Europol officer named Sydney, who had arrived from outside the UK. At that moment, Alves introduced Sydney and shared crucial findings related to Coco's case. Prior to the incident, Coco had sent a message to a young woman named Jen, a singer at the club where the killings occurred. Jen had replied, telling him she was writing a song for him. Alves then discovered that the song playing through Coco's headphones at the time of the incident was the same song performed at Paradise Latin, the club owned by Sergey, where the massacre took place. Not only that, Sydney added that his investigation at the club confirmed there were 5 victims, 1 killed by gunfire and 4 slain with a katana. This evidence strengthened the connection between Coco, the singer, and the bloody incident. The scene then transitions to Z's apartment, where she is preparing a false identity as a U.S. consulate representative under the alias Nun. Once ready, she follows Finn's orders the next morning and heads to the hospital where Jen is being treated. Soon after, Z enters Jen's room without raising suspicion from the guards outside. Introducing herself as an American diplomat, Z takes advantage of Jen's impaired vision, ensuring she remains unrecognized. While maintaining a calm demeanor, Z intends to kill Jen by injecting a lethal substance into her IV line. However, as she prepares to leave, Jen pleads for the chance to call her mother and let her know she's alive, as she is sure her mother is worried. Jen admits that she has been a troublemaker all her life, but wants to make amends if given the opportunity. Hearing this, Z hesitates. A moment of empathy washes over her, prompting her to reconsider. Instead of carrying out her mission, she seals the IV line again. At that moment, Inspector Say suddenly enters the room. Maintaining her diplomatic cover, Z introduces herself and the two exchange pleasantries. Say then begins questioning Jen, trying to extract information about the incident at the club. At the same time, Z remains alert, her hand near her concealed weapon, in case Jen reveals anything incriminating. Unexpectedly, Jen remains tight-lipped, responding only with vague answers, claiming she knows nothing. Hearing this, Z discreetly lowers her guard and places her weapon back in her bag. Say presses further, asking about the man who was slain with a katana in the club, but Jen maintains her stance, insisting she saw nothing. She also denies knowing Coco, refusing to reveal any connection to him. A moment later, a nurse entered the room and reopened the IV line that Z had previously closed. Feeling pity for Jen and convinced that she would not reveal the truth, Z deliberately knocked over the IV stand, causing the liquid inside to spill. She made it seem accidental to avoid suspicion. After meeting Jen, Z and Say left the hospital. Along the way, they engaged in casual conversation, exchanging information about their respective professions. Z remained composed, showing no signs of suspicion. However, shortly after Z departed, Say received a call from the U.S. Embassy, informing him that there was no consular officer named Nunn. Realizing that Z had been in disguise, Say immediately pursued her, but she had already disappeared without a trace. The next day, Z met with Finn, who wasted no time questioning why she had failed to eliminate Jen at the hospital. Z explained that the police were present, and Jen had remained silent when interrogated. However, Finn seemed skeptical, knowing that Z had never failed to complete a mission before. During their conversation, Z noticed two women. Finn introduced them as Chi Mai and Juliet, his trusted lieutenants. Z also spotted two suspicious-looking men and asked about them. Rather than answering directly, Finn reminded Z of her past, how when they first met, she had been as fierce as a lion. He sensed that she was no longer as ruthless as before. Consequently, Finn ordered the two men to take care of Jen once and for all. Seeing the men leave, Z immediately followed them. She staged an accident by throwing herself in front of a passing motorcycle, then swiftly took control of the bike and sped off in pursuit of the men's car through the crowded city streets. As she closed in, she managed to force their car into a crash, ensuring they could no longer complete their mission. Without wasting time, Z headed straight for the hospital to save Jen. On the other hand, Inspector Say was also at the hospital, visiting Jax, who was recovering from the gunshot wound inflicted by Coco. Upon arriving, Z disguised herself as a food delivery worker to infiltrate Jen's room. Once inside, she urged Jen to come with her, warning that many people wanted her dead because of what had happened at the nightclub. Despite her initial hesitation, Jen eventually agreed. Soon, Z placed Jen in a wheelchair and prepared to leave. But before exiting, she incapacitated the guard stationed outside the room. Moments later, Finn's men arrived and spotted Z escaping with Jen. One of them fired a shot, but the bullet missed and hit a nearby nurse instead. Chaos erupted in the hospital, drawing Say's attention. He rushed out and engaged Finn's men in a shootout. Meanwhile, Z remained focused on getting Jen to safety, returning fire and taking down several attackers. As the situation escalated, Say, despite growing suspicious of Z's true identity, chose to help her for Jen's sake. Z eventually took Jen to what she believed was a secure location, a hidden laboratory. However, upon arrival, she sensed that something was wrong. She halted in her tracks when Say suddenly appeared behind her, pointing a gun at her back. Reacting instantly, Z spun around, aiming her weapon at him in return. The two stood locked in a tense standoff, fingers poised on their triggers. Just as the standoff intensified, they both realized that Finn's men had also arrived at the lab. In an unspoken agreement, Z and Say joined forces, swiftly taking down their enemies one by one until none were left standing. After the threat was neutralized, Z once again aimed her gun at Say. However, realizing that Say had run out of bullets, she merely struck him hard enough to render him unconscious. Amid the chaos, Z managed to escape with Jen. Later, Z took Jen to her apartment, considering it the safest place for the time being. Knowing that Jen could not see, Z patiently guided her through the apartment, helping her familiarize herself with the surroundings to make her feel more comfortable. As the tension subsided, the two began to share their pasts. Feeling an unexpected connection, Z opened up about herself and her involvement in the nightclub incident. Listening to Z's confession, Jen realized that Z was the one who had killed everyone in that club and was ultimately responsible for her blindness. However, instead of blaming her, Jen admitted that it was her own foolishness that had put her in danger, trusting Coco, who had only used her as a pawn. Z then asked why so many people wanted Jen dead. At that moment, Jen revealed a shocking secret. The people at the nightclub, including Coco, had stolen a shipment of heroin belonging to Gobert from a private jet owned by Majib upon its landing. Jen further explained that Coco had orchestrated the theft, but later betrayed Sergei's gang by hiding the heroin in a van parked in a warehouse. However, she did not know the exact location since she had only been in Paris for a few months. Upon hearing this, Z was filled with rage. She realized she should have shot Jen that night as well since she had unknowingly been part of a major crime. Struggling with her emotions, Z took Jen to an old church, a place where she often sought solace. Initially, Z intended to kill Jen there, but as Jen began to sing, her voice reminded Z of her long-lost sister. The overwhelming emotions made her reconsider, and she ultimately decided to let Jen live. Moments later, Finn suddenly appeared. His sharp tone made it clear he was displeased. He confronted Z, demanding an explanation for why she had killed his men at the hospital and questioning the whereabouts of Jen. Z, maintaining a cold yet composed demeanor, responded that what she did was part of her job, and no one else had the right to finish it but her. To deceive Finn, Z confidently claimed that she had already disposed of Jen, dumping her body into an incinerator. In reality, Jen was still hiding inside the old church. Satisfied with her answer, Finn smuggled, convinced that Z had returned to her ruthless ways. Once he left, Z took Jen back to her apartment. Meanwhile, Finn attended an art exhibition where he met with Gobert. During their conversation, Gobert immediately inquired about his missing heroine and pressed Finn for an explanation as to why Z, his most trusted asset, had yet to eliminate Majib, whom he believed to be behind the theft. Finn tried to argue that Majib was difficult to get close to, but Gobert refused to accept any excuses. With a firm stance, he declared that Z was fully capable of completing the job, no matter the challenges. Shortly after, a waitress approached Gobert with a drink. Unsuspecting, he took a sip. However, the waitress was none other than Shi Mai, who had been working undercover. Without hesitation, she pulled out a concealed weapon and shot Gobert dead. As Gobert collapsed, the truth unraveled. Finn had been the mastermind behind the heroin theft all along. He had manipulated the situation to divert suspicion onto Majib, ensuring his own plan remained undisturbed. The scene shifts to the police station, where Alves and Sydney are discussing their latest findings with Say. They present CCTV footage from outside the nightclub, revealing that the woman who disguised herself as a U.S. Embassy official is the same person seen near the crime scene. Not only that, they also discover that the woman frequently purchased food from the same place both before and after the incident, a location that happens to be Z's favorite spot. At that moment, Alves remarks that Z is no ordinary person. She is known as a legendary assassin, feared and infamous under the alias the Queen of Dead People. Determined to investigate further, Say visits the location identified from the CCTV footage. There, he spots Z entering the shop where she regularly buys food. The moment she steps outside, Say swiftly pulls his gun on her, not giving her a chance to resist. Z, unfazed and composed, allows herself to be taken to the police station for interrogation. In the interrogation room, Say wastes no time pressing her with sharp questions. He demands to know why she saved Jen, what her true intentions are, and whether this is her way of seeking redemption. In the end, Say warns Z that the kindness she has shown might be exploited as a weakness by the darkness surrounding her. Despite this, Z merely smirks and assures him that Jen is safe. Say then recounts a near-death experience from 4 years ago when he almost lost his life to a Russian drug lord. At the time, Say was undercover, posing as a heroin buyer to take down the dealer. However, his cover was blown and he was shot. Gravely wounded, Say found himself cornered, desperately stalling for time, hoping his partner, Jax, would arrive in time to save him. Say then asks Z what she would have done in his place. Without hesitation, Z replies that she would have asked the drug lord what his shoe size was. Say freezes, realizing that was the exact tactic he had used to distract his attacker. That moment of recognition makes him realize Z's presence in his past. Back then, just as the Russian drug lord was about to pull the trigger, a gunshot rang out, killing him instantly. Say had always believed it was Jax who saved him, but now he knows the truth. The shot came from Z, who had been there all along. As Z is escorted through the station by Say's subordinates, she discreetly unlocks her handcuffs and makes a swift escape. When she reaches her apartment, she is met with chaos. The place has been ransacked, her aquarium shattered, and her beloved fish struggling to survive. Z quickly saves it, but a new wave of panic hits when she realizes Jen is missing. Z immediately checks her security footage and discovers that Jen has been kidnapped. Moments later, a message from Finn arrives, summoning her to a designated location. Meanwhile, at the police station, Say watches in disbelief as officers from Division 7, corrupt cops working for Finn, ransack his office. They plant heroin in his workspace, framing him. Realizing the trap closing in around him, Say makes a quick decision. He must flee before it's too late. Before meeting Finn, Z made a stop at her friend Tessier's place. She brought her beloved fish, entrusting it to Tessier for safekeeping. With a worried expression, Tessier warned her that the place was no longer safe. A few days prior, the police had come looking for her. Though Tessier tried to mislead them by claiming his establishment only housed men, the officers weren't convinced and became increasingly aggressive. Before leaving, one of them handed Tessier a phone number, instructing him to call if Z ever returned. In the end, Z took the number, storing it away for later. After leaving Tessier, Z finally met with Finn. He revealed that he knew Jen was still alive and admitted that he was the one who ordered her abduction from Z's apartment. At that moment, Z firmly demanded Jen's release. arguing that she had no part in this mess. But Finn countered that Jen had been involved in stealing Gobert's heroin alongside her boyfriend Coco. Z asked if Jen was still alive. Finn confirmed it, stating that Jen was with him. Then he made an offer. If Z wanted Jen to be freed, she had to complete one last assignment: kill Say. Reluctantly, Z agreed. Later, Finn instructed Z that Say would be at the farmer's market in an hour, right on the spot marked with the number 43 painted on the ground. For carrying out the task, however, Z demanded proof that Jen was still alive to ensure that everything was proceeding as promised. The next day, Z was positioned on a rooftop, observing Say's arrival through the scope of her sniper rifle. To her surprise, Jax was already there, meeting Say precisely at the number 43 mark. Unbeknownst to Z, Say and Jax had arranged to meet there. During their conversation, Jax questioned Say about what was happening, and Say explained that he had been framed. Meanwhile, Chi Mai, Finn's right-hand woman, was stationed in the adjacent building. She was prepared to take the shot if Z failed to carry out Finn's orders. As Say and Jax spoke, Say received a call from the number given to him by Tessio. It was Z on the line. She accused Jax of betraying Say and demanded that Jax hand the phone to him. Jax, looking uneasy, passed the phone to Say. At that moment, Z fired a shot, hitting Jax. Simultaneously, Chi Mai took a shot at Z, but her bullet struck only a decoy doll that Z had cleverly placed as a distraction. Seizing the moment, Z swiftly retaliated, eliminating Chi Mai with a precise shot. Still on the call, Z informed Say that she had been sent by Finn to kill him. At the same time, Jax had set him up, arranging their meeting as a trap. All along, Jax had been working for Finn, exploiting Say's trust for Finn's gain. Now aware of Jax's betrayal, Z and Say captured him, taking him for interrogation to uncover Jen's whereabouts and the location of the stolen heroin. Initially, Jax refused to talk, but Say, using brutal tactics, forced him into submission, including shaking the car violently to inflict pain. Unable to withstand the torment, Jax finally gave in and revealed the hidden location of the heroin. After extracting the information, Say decided to take Jax to the hospital for treatment. Afterward, Z and Say quickly made their way to the location where the heroin was hidden, hoping to also find clues about Jen's whereabouts. When they arrived outside the warehouse, Z swiftly took down the two men guarding the entrance. After ensuring the area was secure, she shot the lock off the warehouse door, forcing it open. Together with Say, Z entered and discovered the heroin stashed inside a van. Without wasting a moment, they commandeered the vehicle. Once they confirmed the heroin was under their control, Z contacted Finn in a firm tone, informing him that she was now driving around in a van filled with heroin. She made it clear that if Finn wanted the drugs back, he would have to release Jen immediately and unconditionally. Z then headed to an old church where she lit candles corresponding to the number of lives she had taken. It wasn't long before Finn arrived at the church with his men, who had already positioned themselves outside. Finn sat calmly but alertly on one of the pews, glancing behind him but seeing no one. Suddenly, Z appeared, pressing a gun to the back of Finn's head. Unfazed, Finn showed her a video call of Jen being held hostage, a gun pointed at her head. Finn stared at Z and demanded to know where the heroin was. Z replied that it was outside, not far from the church. Unbeknownst to them, Say was listening in through an earpiece, having planted a bug in the area earlier. Meanwhile, outside the church, Say had finished assembling a bomb, which he concealed inside the heroin-filled van. At one moment, Finn suddenly attacked Z, and the two engaged in a fierce brawl inside the church. Z managed to overpower Finn and rushed outside to save Jen. There, she saw Juliet pointing a gun at Jen. In response, Z fired at Juliet, but she retaliated, and a shootout ensued. Amid the chaos, Jen was shot in the side and collapsed. Z immediately shielded Jen, continuing to fight off Juliet and Finn's men, who were attacking relentlessly. Despite this, Z fought back, taking them down one by one while desperately trying to protect Jen. Just as Z began to be overwhelmed, Say suddenly appeared to back her up. Together, they managed to incapacitate most of Finn's men. One of Finn's henchmen attempted to throw a grenade, but Z quickly shot him, causing the grenade to explode prematurely. Finn then emerged from the church, grabbed a weapon from one of his fallen men, and fired at the van. The vehicle came to a halt, forcing Say to run for cover while making his way to Z and Jen to ensure their safety. When Finn and his remaining men approached the van, Say pressed the detonator, triggering a massive explosion that destroyed the van and all the heroin inside. Seizing the opportunity, Say and Z carried Jen into the old church for shelter. As Finn's men tried to close in, Say and Z picked them off one by one, keeping Jen safe. Moments later, Finn and Juliet entered the church, forcing a final confrontation. Z faced off against Juliet while Say battled Finn. The fight was intense, with both sides giving it their all. At last, Z managed to take down Juliet after an exhausting duel. However, as she turned, she saw Say struggling against Finn and the remaining members of his crew. Without hesitation, Z sprinted toward Finn, striking him while simultaneously shooting down his men one by one until they all fell. Just as the situation seemed under control, Finn suddenly shot Z from behind, wounding her shoulder. Before he could fire a second shot, Z attempted to buy time, just as Say had done before when facing the Russian crime lord. With remarkable composure, she asked Finn an unexpected question: what size shoes he wore. The odd question caught Finn off guard, distracting him long enough for Say to toss his weapon to Z. The moment Finn turned his attention back to her, Z swiftly caught the gun and fired a single precise shot, hitting Finn right in the head and ending the battle with that final bullet. With the fight over, Z approached Jen, who could now see again after being rescued. They exchanged a few words, sharing a quiet moment of victory and freedom. The next day, Jen met with her close friend Tessia to receive treatment for her gunshot wound. As they sat together, Tessia carefully tended to Z's injuries. Once patched up, Z turned her gaze toward Jen, who was reuniting with her mother on the rooftop. Meanwhile, Say, still recovering in the hospital, was visited by his superior. The officer informed him that he had been promoted and would receive the Police Medal of Honor. However, Say firmly refused the promotion, stating that the medal did not represent him. He made it clear that he had no interest in working under a division that protected drug smugglers for political gain. In the end, he insisted that he wanted to do his job on his own terms, free from pressure or intimidation. With humility, Say asked his superior to keep both the medal and the promotion, as they were not meant for him. After his superior left, Say called Z. She asked how he was holding up, joking that he had been shot 3 times while she had only been hit once. Say reassured her that he was fine. Z then mentioned that she was looking for a new job and would send him a postcard once she found one. Before ending the call, she bid him farewell, saying they would meet again someday. And with that, the story came to an end. Moral lesson from the story: if you wake up one day and decide to become an assassin, remember to always ask your targets their shoe size. It might save your life. Also, never trust a tailor who calls your suit sacred, because it probably won't stop bullets.